Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios on this Wednesday, August the 28th. It is beautiful to have you guys in for another episode of the Prime Time program, and we are going to recap everything that Rand Carthon, Titans GM, and head coach Brian Callahan had to say on their press conference after roster cut day and during waiver claim day, because there were a lot of transactions that this team has continued to make. And Rand can't stop trading players, trading for players, trading players away. We'll recap that. We'll get to the biggest takeaways that we had from the press conference itself. We'll take a look at the roster as it stands right now, and we'll wrap everything up, not with a gone viral video, because that was last night. We'll do a little rising and falling. I just forgot to change the graphic. That's on me, but we're going to watch the tape. We're going to improve, and we're going to have a great show tonight, as we always do. Need you guys to share the program around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. In the comment section, we appreciate anytime you guys get involved, or most of the comments are spent bitching about my timeliness, this, that, or the other. William Jones says, saw Buck last Saturday at the airport. I was going to speak to him, but figured he would have given me an ad read. Exactly right. I absolutely would have. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com. Don't get too close to me, or I will hit you in the face with an ad read. If you get within 6 to 10 feet of me, I'll try to sell you something, because our sponsors are great. But yeah, I've never been late to the show. So all of you who are complaining about, oh, he's 30 minutes late, oh, he's 10 minutes late, oh, he's 5 minutes early. The show starts when I get here, and I'm here. So let's do the show. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by the wonderful people at Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, where you get quality American-made Ford vehicles and award-winning customer service. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com. Gary Ashton and the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Don't sell without the intel that the Ashton team can provide. Gary Ashton and his team, the official real estate agent of the Preds. TrueMav Fitness in the Gulch, where your first workout is free as a Middle Tennessee resident. Worth Campbell kind of looks like Will Levis in that picture of him doing the Russian twist workout there in the bottom. I guess that's my bottom left, your bottom right. Either way, that does look a bit Levis-ish in the picture. Not Will Levis, Worth Campbell, TrueMavFitness.com, your first workout free. Zen Sports, plug in the promo code ATOZTN, get up to $100 on your no danger first wager in the Zen Sports app, where betting just got better. Okay, Callahan and Rand Carthon at a press conference together. Transactions still in the works, and with a lot of different players who this team has shifted around, moved out, moved on from. I don't necessarily, well, I know that they're not done yet, because again, everything that we have to emphasize with all of this stuff is that it's only an initial roster. Think about how much different yesterday's roster was versus today's roster, where Rashad Weaver has been released, where Elijah Molden has been traded away, more John Robinson draft picks being moved on, and more players being acquired by Rand Carthon, by Anthony Robinson, his assistant general manager, by Chad Brinker, who's their president of football ops, and Brian Callahan and the coaching staff serving in a helping facilitate the acquisition process and giving their insights and their input on different players who you can claim in the waiver order. And the Titans did claim 2 players on waivers today. So a lot of different pieces and parts moving around, but I want to start with the press conference itself, because there was a ton of information to be gleaned. And I want to ask you your Two Rivers Ford take on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. In the comment section, what was your biggest takeaway from Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan's press conference today? We will discuss at length together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible, as is your Two Rivers Ford take, by the South's most trusted Ford dealer. That's Two Rivers Ford. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com for Broncos, for Explorers, for Mustangs, for F-150s. New or certified pre-owned inventory can always be checked out, test-driven, and you can always get the best customer service from Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com. Biggest takeaways from the press conference. Um, any new cornerback yet? No. If you guys, there is no. They did add a player off the waivers today. He's more of a safety, it sounds like, than a cornerback at this point. But they continue to add players, continue to find ways to improve this roster. And in particular, today, 2 players claimed off of waivers, and Elijah Molden traded away. They also cut Rashad Weaver, which was a part of the waiver claim. So they traded away Elijah Molden, who's not a cornerback, right? He's a safety, so that's one of the 5 safeties that they had on the initial roster, and that they've since traded away. They send Elijah Molden to the LA Chargers, where Christian Fulton also is, and where Hassan Haskins was also claimed on waivers. They got back a 2026 7th-round pick, which, not huge return for a guy that started a lot of games for you last year in the absence of Kevin Byard. But we knew that Molden, with the health stuff, I don't know how many games he's actually going to be active for in LA, and he's in a contract year, so making the most amount of money that he's ever made. They apparently approached him about, potentially playing for less. He was not receptive, and they decided it made the most sense to move on from him because, think about it. He's making more money than Jamal Adams, who, whatever he is at this point in his career, is, a more accomplished player than Elijah Molden, and, stood to make damn near as much money as Quandre Diggs based on the safety contracts and the way that they've worked out. So the former 3rd-round pick gets sent to L.A. The player that they claim off waivers in the defensive back room is Julius Woods, and they also claim Ali Gay off of waivers from the Houston Texans. He is a 6'6", 270-pound former LSU defensive lineman. Not clear as to whether they view him as a defensive end or whether they view him as an edge or whether he's going to play, more with his hand in the dirt as a defensive lineman. But Houston let go of Gay on their roster cut, and the Cowboys waived Julius Wood, who the Titans did acquire. So another safety, and another defensive lineman / edge player for your group of 5 edge players now, with Rashad Weaver cut from the roster in a contract year. So all these John Robinson picks continue to get moved on from. Jody Newell says, Autry replacement? No, not even remotely close. Honestly, Jeff Simmons is your Autry replacement, if you want to get technical with it, because Sweat is going to come in and play more. He's obviously a nose, right? He's going to be a nose, but he's going to play exclusively on the inside, unless they get really crazy with it and do some shit like Tampa did last year with Vita Vea and line him up on the outside against the left tackle. Now he's not going to be facing Andre Dillard, so I don't know if they would do that with Sweat, but still, Jeff is going to be your more movable part there. Now, Autry was technically as much an outside linebacker as he was a defensive end, but they moved him around a bunch in the defense. They're going to move Jeff around in this defense because they have Sweat to anchor in the middle, and that's something that Autry used to do. Sebastian Joseph Day and Tavondre Sweat are going to be almost exclusively interior players, but we've seen them put Jeff on the edge in training camp. We've seen them get creative with the way that he rushes against tackles. That is more. If you want to look at what Autry provided to you, Jeff Simmons is going to fill more of that role than he has in years past, because Jeff has been the exclusively interior player, with Autry the more movable piece. And now Sweat can take that role, eat up those double teams, get Jeff singled up on one-on-one and one-on-one matchups and take advantage of it, right? So that's the way that I would look at it. This guy that was waived from the Texans is not going to come in and be Denico Autry's replacement. Denico Autry had double-digit sacks last year and was one of the most successful free agent acquisitions of the John Robinson tenure during the 6 years that he was here. So they continue to clear John Robinson roster decisions out and continue to bring fresh blood in. The question that I'm going to ask you is this: what was your biggest takeaway from Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan's press conference? For me, it was there was a lot of different information to dive into, but what I pinpointed in particular was a response that both of them had on how realistic it is to retool this much of the roster, flip this much of the roster, and expect to be competitive right away. Now, I'm going to lean on Bert here because he's got them all marked as the same thing, and it's literally Rand staring off in the same direction. So I'm not really sure which clip it is. Bert, if you can play for me the correct clip. He doesn't appear to be paying attention to me in the little screen that I see him in. So we'll play a little Russian roulette, and we'll see if this is not the Rand Carthon Brian Callahan clip that I wanted.
Has it earned it, and what was it like to maybe reward him with the news that he made it?
Yep, definitely not the right one. Let's try this one.
Would there be any consideration of putting Cedric Gray?
Also not the right one. I blew the call. This is the right one.
Any claims for anybody that was also claimed by a team higher in the pecking order?
No.
For both of you, please. Chad said it way back at the owners' meetings that when we were talking about the definition of success this year, that it was broadly based on how fast so much change gelled. And you've had probably more change since then than any of you expected in terms of veteran additions. How much do you think that is the key to this year, and how many different directions can that go?
Yeah, anytime you're adding new players, new faces, new people, you're looking at change, and you're looking at relationships that you have to build. And I feel really good about the ones we've built so far, and then we'll add in the guys that we've added in and keep pushing forward. You know, that's sort of the name of the game, and I think we got the right people, which I think is what makes the biggest difference. Is we got really good people on the roster, on our coaching staff, on our team, and people that I think are really good at building relationships. And so, yeah, it's always a part of it. I'm not going to gloss over it and say that, you know, everyone just comes in and on the same page at every second, every moment. It takes work, and the guys that have been here have worked at it, and we'll continue to work with the guys that we add. So it'll always be in progress, I think, as every year you add more players and new players come in and old players leave, and that's just sort of the nature of the NFL. And so that's why every year I think is a new team, and whether you even when you have returning players coming back, each year your team is different. There's different pieces, different people around the team, and you have to keep finding out what your team is for that season. And that's what our job is, and that process is ongoing.
And to add to that, I would say, you know, it's a testament to the leaders that we have on this team. You know, guys like Jeff, you know, who is, you know, obviously he's always been a leader here, but to see where he's grown as a leader and doing things to get in the defense, guys spending time together, you see that a lot, and you kind of see that within the relationships as guys flow throughout the building. And the same thing with Will, you know, with the offense, and those guys spending a lot of time together. So like Brian said, we have a lot of people here who value relationships, not just, you know, from our side of the building, but in the locker room. And all those guys have continued to work within each other. And, you know, I had a conversation with Jeff last week, you know, and he was just telling me that, you know, he feels really strongly about the locker room and, you know, and how the guys are amongst each other. And, I mean, they are a cool group to be around. I mean, you know, Calvin, you see this out at practice every day. You know, after practice, you know, you see Calvin and T. Boyd, you know, out running sprints together. Those guys never played together before, but they've created that relationship, that bond, you know, within each other, as well as other position groups. You see, you know, Tajay and Tony, how they're joined at the hip, you know, at every turn. And so that's, you know, that's pretty consistent across our roster.
That is Rand Carthon, Brian Callahan first, and Rand Carthon second. No thanks to Bert. Talking about the process of immediate expectations and roster construction when you've essentially gone out and bought a team, because they did have to buy a team to get this thing up to a reasonable level of competitiveness. Again, like Alex Blaine Mann says, this just shows how bad J-Rob was. I think that there's a couple of different things that you have to keep in mind here. One, first and foremost, there's no, like, it does you no good to continue to relitigate the John Robinson thing. And I said this on the radio. John Robinson wasn't a bad person. John Robinson's start of his tenure was great. John Robinson's end of his tenure, first 3 years of the 6 years, excellent. Last 3 years of the 6 years, complete and total disaster. He can have started as a good GM and got you back, built you up to a winning organization, because that took some time as well, and then have shit the bed in the second half of his tenure here. I completely believe that both of those things can be so. So just because John started well and didn't finish well doesn't mean that his entire tenure was a disaster. But in trying to sustain, John Robinson and Mike Vrabel were not able to get it done. And that is something that Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan haven't had to go through yet. haven't had to experience it yet. It's all very hunky-dory, all very honeymoon phase-ish with the Titans organization right now. Because, again, there have been no games to play that actually matter with regard to wins and losses. Rand will eventually have to do the same kind of stuff that John did if they are as successful as John Robinson and Mike Vrabel were out of the gate. Mike Vrabel won at a rate here in the first couple of years before the last 2 years went to hell, won at a rate that only Jack Pardee in the history of the Houston Oilers Tennessee Titans franchise has won at. So Callahan and Rand have to match at least the early part of John Robinson and Mike Vrabel before we can even, start to have discussions about did they ultimately upgrade. It's like draft picks, right? How long does it take? How many seasons does it take before you really know what you have in a draft pick? Usually about 2 or 3, unless they're a different kind of a player, right? And they have immediate impact and they don't miss a beat, and that hardly ever happens with rookies. B. French says, yes, but Mike Vrabel inherited a winning team, and that is completely fair criticism of Mike. But also, they won, right? They went to the AFC Championship game. No Titans team had done that since Fisher was here. It had been that long. So he did inherit a winning team. You are not incorrect in saying that, but they capitalized as much as they were able to capitalize. Did they hit a ceiling? They 100% hit a ceiling. Did they fall off a cliff after they hit the ceiling? I mean, 2021, they were the number 1 overall seed. You can debate what happened once they got the number 1 overall seed because it was as catastrophic a loss as any of this franchise has ever experienced. But they did do enough to try and repeat that performance. And ultimately, the quarterback came up. I mean, I don't want to just say came up short. Nuked them. But Ryan Tannehill nuked their chances at making a legitimate playoff run. So we don't have to relitigate all those things because the book is closed, right? You've moved on. This is a new chapter. This is Callahan and Rand Carthon. And we don't have to get ahead of ourselves with them either because we have no idea what their first couple of years are going to look like. But I think in particular, the two of them have checked all of the boxes that you would want this organization to check in trying to build around a quarterback that has promise, in spending the money on critical positions of need, in trading for legitimate assets, whether it's Ernest Jones, L'Jarius Sneed, getting assets back for guys like Malik Willis and Elijah Molden as opposed to just cutting them from John Robinson's roster. And by the way, I don't necessarily think that I don't know if they'll ultimately end up doing more trades or getting rid of more John Robinson players before the regular season actually begins. But I'll tell you what, if I'm Chig Okonkwo, I'm looking around and being like, shit, could I be next? And I don't think that would be unwarranted if I'm Chig to look around and say, there's a real chance that I might be somewhere else. And I think a team would bite or would jump at the opportunity to trade for Chig Okonkwo because he, to me, the further we get into this thing, and not just because they kept 5 tight ends, and I don't think the DMR is going to be a better player than Chig Okonkwo right away or anything like that. But Chig, Burks, they better have their damn heads on a swivel because Burks they need for sure this year. I don't know that they need Chig for sure this year, and I think that is something to keep an eye on with DMR, with Odukoya, with Vanette, who I know they cut but plan to bring back. It's going to be interesting to see how much further they take this. Because certainly Chig hasn't proven anything to anybody yet, and Burks hasn't proven anything to anybody yet. Ironically enough, the safest John Robinson pick that's left is Dylan Radins because he's the starting right guard. So we'll see what happens. Right now, the roster looks the way that it does. And my biggest takeaway is they continue to check all the right boxes. They continue to say all the right things. And now we finally get to see whether they did it right or not. Chicago will be the first test. New York coming into Tennessee after that, Green Bay after that with a couple of former players there, whether it's Willis, whether it's Dillard, those kind of guys, and then Miami on Monday Night Football. We finally get to see after months and months of talking about, okay, well, it all looks right. It all seems right on paper. We'll get to see what they actually got right. And there will inevitably be something that they got wrong. But we don't know either of those things yet. And that's what that's the difficulty in trying to just check boxes on paper ahead of actually seeing the application of this thing. Because for all we know, they could have done this all right and they end up winning the AFC South and be one of these teams that flips worst to first. Or Levis could fall short and they shit the bed and all of this be for naught. And the money spent looks way, way worse until you can move on from Levis, if you need to move on from Levis. And all of that, basically everything, every option is on the table because the unknown is still ahead of us. We think we know what the Titans are right now. We think that what we do know, I'll tell you the one thing that we do know. The thing that we do know is this is a better football team. This is a better football team than the one this franchise fielded in the last 2 seasons. Nobody can dispute this based on the talent that they've upgraded with. Absolutely so. This is a better roster. Now, the applications of that roster and how they coalesce as a team immediately, will it look great in week 1? Will it look better in week 5? Will it improve in week 12? What will this team ultimately be? The answer to that will continue to evolve. And right now, you have to feel good about the direction that they're heading. And that's all that's all you have to feel right now. You can have questions about different things, but based on where they are in the life cycle of this particular team, there's nothing that they have done that wouldn't satisfy some portion of the responsibilities that they had to, or some task that they had to accomplish this offseason, right? It's really been a fascinating rebuild process. And I'm just sitting here waiting like the rest of you to see ultimately what dividends it provides. Now, should you be reassured by a 3-0 preseason? I think a little bit, even though you're probably going to denigrate what the preseason is. I think that you should take positives away from that. Now, does that mean that they're going to, what were the Titans the last time they went 3-0 in the preseason? I've seen this stat tweeted at me. I think they were 12-4 was this 2003, and they went to the AFC title game, if I remember correctly, the last time that they were undefeated in the preseason. Now, obviously, there was 4 preseason games back then, but still, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be this team or not. That was a much differently constructed team, but we will see. We will see what this looks like in Chicago, and I'm going to save my Chicago, hype speech, or not hype speech, but my particular message to them ahead of Chicago for the Thursday before that game. We will see what happens. Did Rand trade Jack, Young, Jim Gaffigan, Gentry? No. I think Jack put his 2 weeks in, and he had a really good run at A-to-Z. So congratulations to Jack, and I'm sorry to see the Tighten Up podcast go. Actually, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what their plans are for the Tighten Up podcast. I have done a really bad job of keeping up with anything, with anything at all, other than everything that's happening with your football team. Apparently, A-to-Z has some kind of announcement tomorrow morning. I haven't bothered to ask what it is. I don't know what it is. But apparently they have something big to announce tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that, and I'm sure it'll be exciting. So all that to say, my biggest takeaway is they continue to check the right boxes, and that's a theme that I think they've maintained over the course of the last several months. Alex says, why did the Rams let Dude go if he's so good? That question was asked of a couple of different people, in particular Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan today. They don't seem to be concerned with the time that he missed dealing with a knee situation. I know that if Bert, again, I don't know if Bert's listening to me or not. In fact, he doesn't even appear to be in his chair, so he's not going to be able to answer this question for me. But I believe that the morning show the morning show had Jordan Rodrigue, who is the Rams reporter for The Athletic, on, and she kind of downplayed the seriousness of the knee injury. Jody Newell says a contract, and that's ultimately the answer. The Rams have been bargain hunting at linebacker for as long as Sean McVay and Les Snead have been running the operation there. I don't know if they're going to skimp this much because the Rosebloom dude is not a starting caliber NFL linebacker, and they're already missing Aaron Donald. I know they drafted a couple of defensive linemen, but they consistently bargain hunt at that position. They don't value off-ball linebackers that way. And listen, it doesn't mean that Tennessee has to pay him. It doesn't mean that Tennessee has to pay him at all. So I think that the fact that he's here without a contract, and the fact that he's already participating in practice is a good sign. And if he has 3 or 4 good games, if he looks the part, right? If he ends up being and I think he would be a slight upgrade. He's definitely an upgrade over Givens. He's a slight upgrade over Aziz Al-Share. He's probably about the David Long, Aziz Al-Share range, which is exactly what you were missing, right? And a player that you were sorry to see go. So they get a 6th round pick and Ernest Jones in 2026 for a 2026 5th round pick. It's a really good value deal. And if the player ends up putting together a first good month of the season, I don't think I would hesitate. I would not hesitate to give him a contract. He is a quality player for Denard Wilson's defense. Now, who ends up spending more time in Tennessee? This is a question for the offseason. But who ends up being in Tennessee longer, Ernest Jones or Denard Wilson? That is a question for another day. Because if Denard Wilson and this defense, if they produce, that dude's going to be a head coach before long. I genuinely believe that in my soul. I know a lot of people in the league are already looking at him as a prospective head coach candidate. So if this defense is functional and ends up exceeding expectation, which right now there are no expectations for this defense. They're playing with house money. So if they look top half of the league, top 16, I don't know how long Denard Wilson is going to be around here. And I don't know if Ernest Jones is just a rental for as long as Denard Wilson is here, or something that they could foresee being a larger part of the defense into the future. But we don't have to get ahead of ourselves before it is necessary. So let's move on and let us get into a couple of other things on this roster that came out of today's press conference. The question I'm going to ask you is this. What has been the most surprising Titans roster transaction in the last 2 days? Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. In the comment section is how you get involved. I will tell you, while you give me your submissions, your most surprising roster transaction in the last 2 days, you can tell me that, and I will tell you that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. GaryAshton.com. Don't sell without the intel that the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators can provide. And also TrueMath Fitness in the Gulch, where your first workout is free. As a Middle Tennessee resident, no workout ever recycled or repeated at TrueMathFitness.com. All right, Bert, since I just saw him sit back down, give me the Thomas Odukoya clip, or I'm going to throw my laptop through the front of my.
One of those guys that earned it, and what was it like to maybe reward him with the news that he'd made it?
Again, you guys will get to see that, and I'm excited about you getting to see it. But a guy like Thomas O, he's never not here in the building. This offseason, he was here just as much as people who worked in the building, and just the way he works and just kind of how he goes about his business. But for a guy to be an international practice squad guy, to now earn his chance on a 53, that's what this league is about. That's what that program was about, being able to have international guys that you work with for a couple years and develop them, and for them to have this opportunity.
He indicated he was full today.
That is Rand Carthon speaking about Thomas Odukoya, the international pathway player that they ended up keeping as the 5th tight end on the roster. It's why I think that Chig is an interesting candidate to keep an eye on. I don't know if anything will happen with him. I know that they would be open to listening to teams if teams were interested in offering them something for Chig Okonkwo. So 5 tight ends is not just a product of Odukoya and DMR showing out in the preseason. I also think it's, the Titans legitimately evaluating, is Chig Okonkwo so much better than David Martin Robinson that we need to keep Chig and can't try and get something for him? Keep an eye on that. A lot of you guys are saying Molden getting traded is a surprise. And I could understand both sides. On the one hand, trading away a safety when your safeties in Adams and Hooker have missed a fair amount of time. Obviously, Adams far more injury issues than Amani Hooker, but Amani Hooker hasn't been the picture of health since he signed that extension a couple of years ago. Now, Quandre Diggs has been an infinitely durable player, but they are, the 3 safeties there, and however they end up deploying Adams, they are thin at safety, given that durability has been the issue. Now, Elijah Molden's durability was not any, he was also not the picture of health, right? The groin injury cost him meaningful reps, cost him meaningful snaps, cost him meaningful development. And ultimately, they upgraded the very next year when they drafted Roger McCreary out of Auburn. Now, McCreary is really the only top 100 draft pick of the last 3 drafts that John Robinson had. I think they had like 11 top 100 draft picks in the last 3 drafts. And in the last 3 drafts that J-Rob had, and McCreary is the only one to end up panning out. But Molden, my understanding was that you shouldn't have been surprised by it, that they continue to look at options to upgrade their safety depth all offseason long. So it should not have come as a surprise to anybody that they, given the opportunity to recoup some value on a guy that they were clearly trying to push out of the lineup. I don't think that's surprising. Now, the draft compensation is I'm not going to say it's nothing, because it is something. It's a pick. It's a 2026 7th round pick that they get back for Elijah Molden. They can turn it into something. They can package it and, trade up for a 6th or a 5th or something like that. Those kind of moves do matter. And of course, they also have the 2025 7th from the Malik trade, and giving up the 2026 5th round pick in the Ernest Jones deal, getting back a 6th round pick with the player. So I wouldn't be surprised. I guess I'm not too surprised by Molden. My bigger area of surprise is that somebody was willing to actually give up a pick for a player that the team was clearly trying to, find better options than. So that's kind of where they are right now. Fall for life. So should we trade for Jamar? Are you talking about Jamar Chase? I assume so, even though that's obviously not the way to spell his name. I did see that Zach Taylor had to walk some comments back about Jamar Chase playing in week 1 because apparently he's not practicing again. And that is a situation the Bengals fans are hovering over very, very much. But looking at Borg Borkington says 2026 is supposed to be a better draft than 2025, which is, I hope, said tongue-in-cheek, because if it is being said tongue-in-cheek, it is hilarious. If not, it's a completely ridiculous comment. So I think that I'm hoping that was said in jest. Lovey Howell says, any news on Bowser? Yes, he worked out for the Titans today, worked out for the Colts yesterday. Unclear as to whether they're going to consider him an upgrade over Ali Gay, who they claimed off of waivers and swapped out Rashad Weaver for. They did keep Caleb Murphy. I wouldn't look at Caleb Murphy as any kind of save either. If they do find more viable options, I think teams are just trying to figure out whether he's healthy enough to sustain in the kind of shape he's in, because Tyus Bowser has had moments of production and seemed like a quality player in the Ravens defense, but ultimately had some injury stuff that ended up derailing his career a little bit. And, doesn't mean that he can't find another opportunity elsewhere. I'm sure Titans fans hearing that he also worked out for the Colts and left without a contract there would say, oh, quickly sign him before some other AFC South team does. But, I don't know that Tyus Bowser would be an immediate upgrade over the players that they have right now. I do know that they are looking at as many options as humanly possible to make that happen. Steve Haygood says, has anybody picked up Bryce Oliver yet? I did not see his name on the waiver claim stuff that came out today. So it sounds like they might be able to get him on the practice squad. We will see when they announce the practice squad officially tomorrow. Okay, so that being said, Molden, not the biggest surprise to me. The bigger surprise is the tight ends. Now we'll get to stock up and stock down this week in sports, a little rising and falling. I know the graphic says gone viral, but that's my fault. I forgot to switch it. Let me know who stock rose, who stock fell this week in sports on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. We will react together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Zen Sports. Download that app. Plug in the promo code ATOZTN. Football right around the corner. Week 1 in college football. Going to be all over your televisions, your iPads, your streaming platforms all weekend long. Zen Sports is your place to bet. That promo code ATOZTN, up to $100 on your no danger first wager. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line. 1-800-889-9789, must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet at Zen Sports. Okay, so looking at the situation for guys whose stock rose, guys whose stock fell. Rand, says Jody Newell, stock up. Cordy Jackson says stock up, go Dogs. Stock down, Clemson. Clemson is a 2-touchdown underdog in that game, which seems crazy to me, given what Clemson's football program has been. I know that Dabo is in, I don't think that he's necessarily in danger of losing his job, but Dabo's program needs to get it figured out, because I know he's been anti-transfer portal, anti-NIL stuff, but he's got to figure out a way to get it involved in his program somehow, to do what Kirby's doing, to do it, on a case-by-case basis, and not what Florida State did this offseason, for example, which is completely try and retool their roster through the portal and, not come away with a talented football team, but not necessarily a team yet. And you saw evidence of that in the way that they were smacked around by Georgia Tech, as Willie Jeans in the comment section says Florida State stock down. Jack Gibbons says Cortland on Facebook Live says Jack Gibbons stock down. Yes, slightly, right? Slightly stock down on the Jack Gibbons thing, but he's still probably going to play. He's probably still going to play a good amount of football for you. So I wouldn't say inherently stock down. If you're going to say to stock down Jack Gibbons, then the appropriate way to describe that, I would say, is stock up Titans off-ball linebacker depth. Because Gibbons now, as a rotational player and as a reserve player, you feel a lot better about, because at least you know that he's got experience, that he can manage a situation well enough, and then he's seen enough situations, or a handful of situations, that'll at least equip him, as opposed to dropping an Otis Reese into the line of fire, or Cedric Gray, who's going to be my stock down here in this, because Cedric Gray, the 4th-round pick out of North Carolina, is going to start the year on injured reserve, and he will be eligible to return after missing 4 games. But for the discourse around this guy being somebody that could play right away, if Cedric Gray pans out, they don't have to trade for Ernest Jones. If Chance Campbell stays healthy, they don't have to trade for Ernest Jones. The question that I am curious to know is if they were going to trade for this guy anyway, because the moves that they made at linebacker were insufficient, and they found an opportunity to upgrade that position.
What's the plan for him from now through next week and going into Chicago?
He's practicing, so he's ready to roll. He should be.
We'll be getting Nick back. Nick Vanette will be back with us. So again, like we said earlier, that was more of a procedural, move to be in compliance with the 53. But we will be signing Nick Vanette back.
Be back on the 53.
Yes.
Yep. So then you'll have to make a procedural move, cutting somebody up.
Will not.
You're at 52 right now.
We will be able to sign Nick Vanette back to the 53 without making any procedural moves.
Would there be any consideration of putting Cedric Gray on IR to start the season, or is that something you see him working through in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I get to break news. According to sources, we will be placing Cedric Gray on IR, designated for return, just to give him an opportunity to, get healthy. Had the conversation with Cedric this morning. He's one of those guys that you got to protect him from himself. Because he wants to prove that, he wants to be on this team, and he's earned the right to be on this team. And so with the nature of his injury, we just got to protect him from himself and give him, an even longer period to get back healthy for us.
The injuries at that position, how much did that play into the decision to trade for Ernest?
No, I mean, it's you talk about sometimes just being lucky and things falling in your lap, and that was just one of those situations. I think, if you go back to the very beginning, we were excited about Wallow, and where he was going, and then, he gets hurt, and obviously everyone's seen, how Chance has developed, and, then his injury happens, and so it's just one of those things that just fell in your lap, the opportunity to add a guy that's played a ton of ball, that's played at a Pro Bowl, level, that's played in a lot of big games, and it was an opportunity for us to add him, and so we took that chance.
So that is Rand Carthon breaking a little bit of news and putting Cedric Gray on injured reserve to start the year. Now, the new IR rule, they had the ability to do that with 2 players on roster cut day to then get them through the roster cut process and give them a situation where they can bring them back after 4 games. They have to miss a minimum of 4 games, but they can return after that and not count against the initial 53. Carl Clemens says, love how Rand just shuts PK up. Yeah, they've really figured out how to get a handle on Karski anymore. He hasn't had any explosive moments in press conference. They've given him, they haven't lost a game yet. So, it will be a much different, the tenor of press conferences will eventually change when they eventually get to a speed bump in the road. But right now, they seem to be managing all of us pretty well as managing their roster and roster construction. So we will see how all of this plays out. I'm looking forward to it. All right, that is going to do it for us tonight. Radio show tomorrow. Mike Sando of The Athletic. He does his annual quarterback tier rankings. Will Levis, where did Will Levis rank? Maybe some of you who have seen The Athletic have seen Will Levis's ranking. Maybe you are upset about that. Maybe you understand that. But Mike Sando is going to explain why NFL executives can consider Will Levis to be a tier 4 quarterback, where there are only 4 tiers of quarterback. He will be on the radio show tomorrow morning, and we will get a good explanation from Sando then. Have a great rest of your evening. We'll, for those of you who are looking for the install tonight, we scrapped the install today for the press conference because the press conference and the taping time that we normally have coincided. So we're going to do the install tomorrow, and that'll be a great time. Have a great rest of your evening, and I will see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
Go home! Go home! Go home! You're embarrassing Nashville! Go home!